Think you know about muscle cars? About those flashy designs and V8 engines? Think again. Some of the most powerful Chevy muscle cars from the 1960s have flown under the radar. For some reason, their peers grabbed the spotlight, but that is why we are here today, to talk about forgotten legends that are the real deal. Stay with us and check the top 3 hidden gems of Chevy's 1960s muscle cars, because they deserve way more love than they ever got. There is no better way to start this short list than with the good old Bel Air. Forgotten by many, this model represents one of the most unassuming yet brutally powerful cars of the early 1960s. We like to say that it was one of those cars that defined the sleeper term, because it was anything but flashy. It didn't have Impala's appearance. It was rather plain, with a lack of chrome exterior trim and with bench seats. It was a car that perfectly blended with the environment, but only until you pressed the gas pedal. Because while aesthetics were toned down, things were quite the opposite under the skin. There, customers would find an engaging chassis of a car that had one of the best power-to-weight ratios back in the day, which made it a natural choice for drag racers. Actually, drag racers and performance enthusiasts in general were probably the only ones that appreciated Bel Air's design. The wider masses weren't particularly thrilled, which once again proved the theory that most people care more about form than substance. Because this definitely wasn't the prettiest car of the time. We already talked about its plain design, which was completely opposite to the super popular Impala, which would, in just a couple of years, reach its peak with over 1 million units sold only in 1965. But the masses overlooked one thing: the Bel Air was lighter and more athletic than the Impala. It was better to drive, especially in the right configuration, and that leads us to the engine. The legendary 409 V8 that would turn the lightweight Bel Air into a street rocket. Because this dual-barrel 409 cubic inch V8 was the epitome of big block power, and ideal proof that, as they were saying back in the day, nothing beats cubic inches. Its power figures were crazy: 409 horsepower and 420 pound-feet of torque. The Bel Air was one of the most brutal forces on the street, and true enthusiasts adored its no-nonsense attitude. This car was strictly about business, and its business was to embarrass the most celebrated muscle cars of its time. In most cases, it would succeed in such a mission, because not only was it light and incredibly powerful, but it also featured a 4-speed manual transmission, which wasn't exactly a common thing for its class back in the day. However, the bare performance potential turned out to be not enough for commercial success. The Bel Air ended up being overshadowed by the fancy Impala, even though it was a better performer, while icons that would come in the following years, such as the Chevelle SS, would suppress it from the list of best-known Chevy's muscle cars. Things haven't changed much up to these days. Today, this car still has a relatively small following compared to other muscle cars GM was producing back in the day. But even though only true enthusiasts remember, the fact is that this forgotten legend takes a special place in muscle car history as a car that paved the road to other GM muscle legends, a car that represents a true hidden gem among today's muscle car enthusiasts. There's a pretty long list of reasons why the Kingswood, although an excellent performer, has been long forgotten and definitely isn't the most sought-after muscle car these days. Because it never had the stance of a typical muscle car. It wasn't a flashy coupe with hood scoops and stripes. Instead, it was a wagon, a family hauler, a car that featured self-leveling suspension for more convenient towing sessions. So you probably wonder why we are putting words like station wagon and muscle car in the same sentence. It's because even though its form may not suggest that, the Kingswood was a genuine muscle car. It was based on Impala, and just like its way more famous cousin, it was available with some pretty serious powertrain. And if there's a configuration to point out, that would be the Kingswood 427, a version that had the legendary L72 under the hood. That's right, it features a 427 V8, the same one Chevy was installing in the Corvette, with 425 horsepower and 460 pound-feet of torque. Paired either with a 3-speed automatic or 3-speed manual, the Kingswood 427 was capable enough to embarrass the whole army of muscle cars at the stoplight while carrying the entire family and their luggage. Even though imagined primarily as a family hauler, the Kingswood 427 actually had even higher performance potential than Impala and other siblings, because it had a few more aces up its sleeve, such as the available limited slip differential. Moreover, due to its specifics, the station wagon design, the Kingswood actually had extra weight on the rear end. Combine that with the aforementioned L72, and you get a car that has more traction than all those fancy coupes and actually is more than just a straight line brute. Obviously, the big block Kingswood was largely overshadowed by its coupe and sedan counterparts. Simply, wagons weren't perceived as performance cars back in the day, so most people overlooked this genuine performance car in favor of more common offerings of the era. And just remember, it was the year 1969, the time when Chevy's offers included Camaro, Chevelle, Nova SS, and Impala SS, a Corvette if you want. It was pretty much impossible for one wagon to stand out with such in-house competition. But still, that doesn't change the fact that this was one of the most outrageous muscle machines ever built. A model that showed the world that station wagons can offer much more than just practicality. And it did that decades before Audi and other brands that are typically associated with high-performance wagons today. Unfortunately, modest sales figures were just one part of the problem. Just a few Kingswood 427 survived in pristine condition, which added an extra layer to their obscurity. The Biscayne wasn't exactly designed to attract buyers who were in the market for high-performance muscle cars. Instead, it was Chevy's most affordable full-size car, notably cheaper than its close relatives, Impala and Chevy, because it had no frills. It was rather a very basic car with manual windows, rubber mats, and a general lack of convenience features, standard or optional. For that reason, it was rather seen as an excellent choice for fleet buyers, police departments, and budget-conscious buyers in general. But still, Chevy decided to offer it in one very interesting configuration, one that would blend the unassuming full-size sedan look with a monstrous big block V8. And it was the very same high-revving unit from Chevelle and Corvette, the famous 427, producing 425 horsepower, which was plenty enough for the status of one of the most powerful sedans of its time. It was a perfect sleeper with a stripped-down interior and lack of chrome trim. It even featured steel wheels, a wolf in sheep's clothing, ready to humiliate most of those fancy-looking sports coupes with ease. But since it was never perceived as a high-performance car, the Biscayne never made significant commercial success. Simply, it was seen as a workhorse, so most buyers weren't particularly interested in this high-end configuration, except for a small group of enthusiasts who figured out that this could be a perfect car for maximum performance. No-frill design was great, but the Biscayne's biggest advantage was its weight. With the obvious lack of comfort and convenience features, it was lighter than its siblings with a better power-to-weight ratio, which made it perfect for quarter-mile sprints. The Biscayne 427 was a truly special car, a performance bargain. It was one of the best-kept secrets among performance enthusiasts because its ability to deliver impressive performance without drawing much attention was a perfect way to remain unnoticed by police patrols. But for the very same reason, the commercial success was left out. Customers wanted style and gravitated towards Chevelles and Camaros. The Biscayne 427 was destined to remain an underground legend, and it's a real shame that, even today, it doesn't get the recognition it deserves and remains largely overlooked. The fact that, due to its price tag, the Biscayne was usually perceived as a workhorse didn't help either, because that's one of the key reasons why there aren't many examples that survived. So, even with the obvious lack of demand, enthusiasts of today still have a lot of trouble finding an example that's in relatively decent condition. Looking back at these forgotten legends, it's not hard to conclude that Chevy's muscle car lineup in the 1960s was so packed with icons that ended up overlooked was inevitable for some of them. despite the incredible performance and distinctive approaches to the muscle car design. But these sleepers, stripped down and with unexpected designs, showed us that being a genuine muscle car isn't about some fancy coupe look. It's about the spirit of raw power that can, obviously, come in various forms. But just because they didn't make the desired commercial success or get the same level of attention doesn't mean that we shouldn't celebrate them. Actually, we think that these forgotten legends are even more special than their more famous siblings, because they give us a much better picture of how great the golden era of muscle cars was. That's why we take every opportunity to honor these machines, these unsung heroes that, as long as muscle car culture thrives, will never truly fade. If you enjoyed this brief look at 3 underrated muscle cars, make sure to subscribe, because there's plenty more content on our channel that you'll love. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.